To discuss the emerging role of the Piedmont Atlantic Megaregion, I have in the studio with me Catherine Ross. She is director of the Georgia Tech Center for Quality Growth and Regional Development, and Chick Krautler. He's director of the Atlanta Regional Commission. Thank you both for joining me. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Tell me this. Help me really understand the concept of a megaregion. What does it entail, Catherine?
Well, think about extended networks of urban centers that cross state boundaries, political jurisdictions, and focus on a common economic capability that they share. Yeah.
Common, when you say, but it goes beyond just economic. I mean, it's natural resources.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
they
water
share
and it's
infrastructure and natural resources, and you've just suggested water, and there's a lot of social commonality that exists among them as well.
Why would we want to do it, Chick? Why do we want to participate?
I think we have to recognize that we're in a global economy, and Atlanta, as successful as it's been, probably can't continue to be successful in the future unless we harness the energy of our partners in the region. And the Piedmont Atlantic Megaregion really stretches from Raleigh through Charlotte, down with Atlanta as the core, right. And then on to Nashville, and it brings in a lot of areas that have, as Catherine said, an economic commonality that will help us all be more competitive in the future.
What have we seen either elsewhere in the United States or elsewhere in this world where these megaregions and alliances have been formed where they've really begun to show some benefit?
I think there are a lot of clear examples. Let me just give you two. One is look at the European Union, which really framed itself around this whole notion of regions and megaregions that transcend national boundaries, not just state boundaries. Yeah. Or look at the emergence of Mumbai or Shanghai or Beijing as economic powers unto themselves. They are, in fact, megaregions. And even within their sphere, they have other cities that exist. So I think we're seeing it happen in a lot of places. And it's been a bit of a surprise, I think, for many of us in the States, as we sort of have done our research and watched these 10 areas really sort of pop out over time and begin to define a whole new economic geography.
If you just think about what's happened in the economic relationship between Savannah and Atlanta since the port took off 6 or 7 years ago, the economic activity that's taking place between those two areas is just phenomenal, and that really is what needs to happen on a much bigger scale in order for us to be competitive.
It's a microcosm of sorts for what needs to happen throughout the entire several state region.
Absolutely.
Right. There are 10 megaregions in the United States. How do we compare in terms of size or population or rate of growth?
Well, I think our rate of growth and population growth is right near the top. I'd say 1 or 2. Geography, larger than some, smaller than others. Of course, New York is extremely large, California. But I think we compare very favorably. We also have the benefit of a historical relationship, I think, between Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, and Raleigh, which really forms the economic core for the Piedmont Atlantic Megaregion that gives us the opportunity to really take advantage of that identity, more close-knit identity, I think, in a way that other megaregions can't.
What are the key opportunities? Because this is an opportunity. I mean,
it is.
We really don't have an option to sit by and not participate. I mean, it would be detrimental, I'm assuming we all agree.
Absolutely.
So what are the key opportunities?
Well, we've talked about some earlier, the whole notion of transportation and building infrastructure that continues and focuses on sort of a corridor kind of efficiency that starts in Raleigh and goes all the way down through Birmingham, for example, or high-speed rail investment. It makes sense to obviously plan on a grander scale than we typically do. But I think also the whole question of rethinking our role in the global economy, when you think of the concept of the megaregion, it brings us 57.2 million people, not limited to the population of the state of Georgia or either one of those. That's a whole nother scale of opportunity and a way to rethink how we begin to focus on job creation and creating industries that make some sense across a 6-state region that may not play as well. When we look at just the state level.
A tough question. I don't want to throw a big wet blanket on all this, but we've struggled with even a discussion over water with our neighbors. So realistically, how do we begin, without being territorial, How do you really begin those discussions, and who's at the table?
Well, I think you start with policymakers. You get some key individuals who understand the concepts of what we're talking about, and begin to expand that to planners and chambers of commerce and the decision makers throughout the region, and then begin to look for opportunities where multiple cities can benefit from certain activities. We were talking about freight, moving freight from either Charleston, the Port of Charleston, or the Port of Savannah into the inland part of the United States only works if we have a good freight network, whether it's roads or railroads that go across state lines.
Do you envision a government structure, an overlay of sorts?
I think the governance question is really up in the air, and it has a lot to do with the posture of the federal government and its response to megaregions. Right
Is it
now,
responding favorably?
I think it is. We are conducting research now for the U.S. Department of Transportation that really looks at what megaregions mean for infrastructure investment, which is a look we've never taken before. And it begins to suggest that current investments, planned high-speed rail corridors, improvements to bottlenecks along our interstate aren't necessarily targeting megaregions. We think that's not a good way to plan. We would never have known that had we not taken this megaregion, this broad look at connectivity. And just to respond quickly to what Chick has talked about relative to mobility within the megaregion, imagine being in Shanghai and shipping something to Savannah, then having to go from Savannah to Tennessee. The megaregion allows us to have a discussion and the capability to plan from something as far away as Shanghai, China, and Atlanta, Georgia, for example.
So I'm hearing governance and the federal perspective is still
really,
gelling, and it all
exactly
still gelling.
right.
I'm not going to jump
That's
out
right.
ahead, but that is a discussion that needs to be had.
Absolutely.
Legalities,
And it's picking up some momentum too.
And incentives, I think. I mean, the place where the federal government can really help is to provide incentives for interstate activities, and there is some discussion about that, at least in the transportation department, about perhaps providing some funding for mega regional scale projects, which they've never done in the past, beyond the interstate system. So to encourage us to do things cooperatively.
And you are encouraged by some of those signs.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Very much so.
What are the next steps? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think infrastructure investment is going to be very high, and it's really important as we've discussed. And so I think we'll see my prediction, some movement, because almost across party lines there's a recognition that we've underfunded and not maintained our infrastructure, and it's critically important in terms of global competitiveness. So I'm expecting that we'll see a lot more attention and to follow Chick's thought, some resources to really incentivize this whole need that we're talking about now.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there's so much discussion about the need for infrastructure investment at the national level that Congress may very well look to regions that are already established and try to get more bang for its buck by making sure that there's some regional cooperation. So, there are 3 or 4 mega regions that are really head and shoulders above the others. Now, that's not to say that we've really accomplished a lot, but we've done a lot more research than some of the others have, and I think to that extent we'll be well served if, in fact, the President and the Congress does, in fact, start to look at infrastructure investment and start to target it in multi-state projects that really benefit the U.S. rather than a single state.